In this episode, we're going to tear down some of the most common movie tropes. What is a movie trope, you ask? Well, if you're not sure, stay with us and find out.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. As always, every episode I start with thanking you for joining us, which we always will thank you, and we appreciate it as always. Sometimes I'm told I say that too much, but I don't think you can ever show too much appreciation. Is that true? Is that right, Eric?
I think so. I think it's
or can it be too much?
Well, maybe, I don't know. It could be. No, I don't. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, there is something.
I'm not going to say what I'm thinking, but no, I don't think it's a bad thing to thank everybody, especially on our live stuff when people show up, and it's always
people have a lot of choices. You can listen to any number of podcasts about other subjects or these same subjects, and tuning into our little space of the internet is always a joy for us. So thanks for joining us, and we've got a full boat today again with our veritable Brady bunch of guests today. So let's roll through. We've got the great City of Kick ambassador Nick Leshi joining us again. Last seen on the Star Trek II Wrath of Khan episode. Welcome aboard, Nick.
Great episode.
Thank you.
Yep.
How you doing?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Looking forward to talking to you guys again.
Yep.
Cool. Next up is if you're watching this on YouTube, very stylish. He's got the blue shirt and he's got the blue hat and he's got the 3324 podcast hat. So how could we not have Sean Grady back with us? Welcome back, Sean.
Welcome, Sean.
Yeah. Always great to see you with you all.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you as well. Last but certainly not least is Christy Cuomo. Last seen on
American Idiot.
American Idiot.
Yes, Green Day.
Okay, the album.
No,
yes,
the album.
Got it.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard, Christy. How are you?
I thought you were calling me an American idiot.
No, never.
Thank you for clarifying the album.
Words that never crossed anybody's lips. You're on the episode.
Thank you for having me.
American Idiot.
Yes.
So welcome one and all to our guests. We're going to take a little break from the specific subject matter of talking about a specific movie or a specific album. And I thought it would be fun just to kind of have a general discussion. It seems to come up a lot with movie tropes. And like I said, if you're not sure what a trope is, there is actually a Google definition, but I'm not going to pull it up. Once we start the conversation, you'll know. But basically tropes are kind of the things that, I don't know if I'm going to ask everybody anyway, but you might consider it a shortcut to screenwriting or a shortcut to filmmaking.
Yeah.
A lot of common themes that you'll see in movies, and then they'll kind of trot that out and you'll see it recycled over and over again, be it a type of plot device or a certain way a movie ends or a certain way characters meet. If you see a lot of that over and over, it kind of becomes a trope. So we're going to be talking about that, right, Eric?
Yep, absolutely. Certain characters are tropes themselves, the way they're depicted, the way they act in the thing. So, yeah. And I think a good script depends on, the screenwriter taking those tropes and using them wisely, or sometimes even subverting those tropes. So, yeah.
That's when it's most interesting. Like I said, tropes inherently in this case are not, we're not going to be talking about the great ones. We're going to be talking about the ones that kind of pop up a lot that are just kind of, I don't want to say annoying, but you see them so often that it almost seems like it's a shortcut, or it lessens the movie experience, and let's kind of start off with one that became its own cottage industry. The one I was thinking of that when Die Hard came out. Right. So Die Hard was a guy trapped in a building, one man against a whole bunch of other people. That started a cottage industry, which Steven Seagal started to cash in on, of the trope of Die Hard on a dot. Like what is how movies would then be pitched to studios or when you would see reviews, like when Under Siege came out from Steven Seagal, Die Hard on a submarine or a ship or whatever it was, like that kind of trope launched its own kind of cottage industry of other films like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The character basically in the hiding, watching things play out just as John McClane does in the first Die Hard movie. But there's so many, it's been used so many times, just getting the bad guy, picking them off one by one. So it's always a thing. And then of course, by the end of it, it's like this grandiose, full on kick-ass scene where there's a lot of explosions and, that kind of thing. And perhaps even the thing that they're in, the building, ship, whatever, is destroyed as well. So there's that trope of, added to it, the collateral damage of everything around them getting, basically picked
usually
off.
Usually they get stranded somehow, left behind, lost, taking a wrong turn, and then they're by themselves.
Yeah.
Die Hard might have gotten the credit when people were pitching their films, but don't you think that maybe Rambo kind of started that a little bit, in that type of character in a film where you have this hero who you can't kill. He's always getting himself in a situation. He's blowing things up. He's getting out of the situation. He gets shot, but somehow he lives. So Die Hard probably was just a little bit more popular because it was so much bigger. That was the thing, is it introduced the everyman First
in
Blood is just as much the same vein of that.
Yeah,
of that trope,
definitely in the same vein, but in a smaller package, right? Die Hard became this big over the top, a regular guy doing things, running on glass and then swinging on a fire hose through the windows and doing things that a normal person wouldn't.
Yeah.
In that situation, right? In First Blood and Rambo, it's more covert and stealthy and using his the techniques he learned in Vietnam, and
survival skills and the environment too. I mean, he's out in the woods. There's a lot more. It's more vast. Whereas in Die Hard, it's more claustrophobic. Right. There's only so many places he can go and hide, and that kind of thing too. So that makes it interesting as well when you've got this high rise. I think it's a callback to those old films in the 70s, like the Towering Inferno. Mm-hmm. I think that's the kind of vibe that they were going for that particular film. It's like, what if this building was like on fire and this guy's there's terrorists blowing stuff up on one floor and he's up there and what happens there. So it just made for a different
And then you have the trope of he's going to be in trouble for what he's doing. Like there's somebody saying, you're going to have to pay for this. You're going to have to answer for this.
The chief or the sergeant,
Paul Gleason, ladies and gentlemen. There you go.
you can't break the rules like the one chief that has it in for him or the one sergeant.
And
right?
he's always going to get his comeuppance at the end. Like he's going to get a punch in the face by somebody, because at the end or
who gives a shit about glass?
Yeah.
Even the reporter in Die Hard too. He was like kind of scummy too, and he has that punchable face as well.
Yeah, right. Well, she does get punched. Bonnie Bedelia.
You don't even have to look at him to know that you just want to slug that guy. So.
Yeah. Was that William Atherton?
Yeah, William Atherton. Yeah, he was in something else too.
Ghostbusters,
and there was another one too where he played the same kind. He plays the same kind of snaky, sleazy guy.
Die Hard 2.
Was it Real Genius?
Does he come back?
Yes, Real Genius.
Real Genius.
He was like the principal or the dean in Real Genius with the popcorn.
He's always hiding behind that prestigious role, like he's a reporter, he's a principal. And the other thing, he's like the city inspector or whatever, and he's like thinking that he's doing the right thing, but he doesn't know shit.
Is that a Nick? Do you think that's a trope within a trope where you're hiring this guy? This guy has that punchable face. So does that mean you're gonna hire him because you want that immediate? You want him to be signaled already as this is the guy that we're not gonna like.
I think character types are definitely tropes, and I hear a lot of times people kind of interchange trope and cliche. I think a cliche is like when a trope kind of has become so overused it's bad. I think a trope can be useful in storytelling because it's the familiar. It brings it. And then if the writer and the director and the actor kind of bring something original to it, those tropes kind of work, so you have like Speed, is Die Hard on a bus, and that worked,
Yeah.
Then you have the others that are just kind of like, okay, that, it's just that tagline, it didn't work. So, characters can certainly be tropes, and it's, if you do it the right way, if they, but I think that's what makes genre movies what they are. You go to a Western, you expect certain tropes, certain familiar elements to it. And then the good ones make it unique and go in different directions and surprise you. But I think audiences kind of want certain familiar elements, right? Yeah. And they expect that. And I think if you don't deliver, if you don't go down that path, they kind of feel cheated, or like, oh, you wasted that opportunity, or you didn't do anything with that character, or, so I think, and then, you have all those movies that make fun of all the tropes, Airplane and all the Mel Brooks movies, and, Scream really played up all the horror tropes,
Right.
So, yeah.
Actually, Scary Movie did it even more.
And Scary Movie made fun of
Yeah.
Scream made fun of the horror movie trope, and then Scary Movie made fun of that for making fun of it.
Yeah.
Another one, which was a popular one. You don't see it too much now, but the ragtag kids sports team of losers that cannot play. They're the last kids that are picked for football or soccer, whatever it is. And there's the heavy kid. There's the dorky kid who's not athletic. There's the girl that's the tomboy, and she's really good. And then there's the coach that's indifferent and doesn't really want to be there. But then by the end, they go through their growing pains, so to speak, and they kind of come together and win in the end. The interesting thing about that trope, it came from a movie where that wasn't the ending, right? Bad News Bears was like the beginning of the Misfits.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The Bad News Bears at the end of the movie did not win.
Yeah, no, they don't win.
They lost. Right. Yeah. That was kind of like the Rocky. It was more akin to Rocky, where they did what they could, but it was more realistic of you weren't going to win. But after that, you had all these other ones like, Ladybugs and Little Giants and all this kind of Mighty Ducks, where the
Sandlot.
But the Sandlot, that's a great one.
But that also, I think, filters into like Major League and the replacements, like the big people playing, like the Misfits. The Misfits on the professional teams, and then they have the same type of story.
You got to throw Wildcats in there. Come on, let's not.
Wildcats. Goldie Hawn, Wesley Snipes.
Wesley Snipes. That was like one of his first roles. Woody Harrelson was in it too.
Yeah,
Harrelson. And then they would reunite.
That's right.
White Men Can Jump
movies.
Yeah. I think that's one of the ones that became so predictable. Anytime you saw that, you knew the kids were going to win, and that's maybe why Bad News Bears was a little more. I mean, Bad News Bears doesn't age well nowadays, anyway.
Yeah,
very subversive when compared to some of those other films.
Neither do my posters.
What's that?
I said neither do my posters. Apparently,
no.
Neither do your posters if you're watching on YouTube.
Yep.
But I think it became more of a message about, these kids can come together and win and overcome adversity and kind of differences and work together and be inclusive, which Bad News Bears accomplished as well. They just didn't have to win at the end. They still came together at the end.
It has its own lesson to tell, and that is the victory is them coming together, working as a team. And they lose, but what they gained something else. They found something in themselves.
And in the anti-participation trophy category, they threw the second place trophy at the winning team. Was it Tanner? Like, threw it at him, said, "We'll be back next year. Like, take this piece of shit."
That's right.
We don't want they didn't even want the second place trophy.
Movie.
The 70s. You got to love it.
That's why that movie works, because they don't win and they don't want the trophy. Like, that's what makes that movie so great.
And another trope in that same film would be like the curmudgeonly older person who has to come in and take this ragtag group of losers and turn them into something. Right. And they don't want to do it, but then their heart starts to melt and they feel, I think that
they
also
turn around and
what you didn't see in subsequent films though is the coach giving beers to the kids. Like you saw in Bad News Bears. I mean, he's cracking open Budweisers and Schaefer's, and they're at the end. These kids are all drinking from like bottles of Genesee or whatever. Like,
Vast difference between that and Mighty Ducks. Like Emilio Estevez, he's got his own issues. Like he wanted to be a hockey player, didn't get there.
And he got a DWI, so he did have a trouble. And the character had a DWI in Mighty Ducks, so had to do this for community service. But that's even in the kids section, there's that trope. Or is it a cottage industry? I mean, is there a difference? When you're going to make these types of films, and because you're going for a younger audience, so you're trying to make them feel better about themselves. And is that acceptable? Is it fine to do that?
I don't know, but here's a question: Do you think that movies from the 70s and 80s, because we're actually referencing a lot more of those than maybe newer films, had more tropes and we're just better about hiding it now? Because you could go back and you could talk about Youngblood with Rob Lowe being like the troubled hockey player, or Iron Eagle, there were so many tropes in so many 80s movies that it was, and either we just didn't understand it or we were just used to it. But now I don't think it's still there, but it's not as obvious, I don't think. I mean, would you agree with that?
I actually asked my daughter, my 13-year-old daughter, because I was like, how do I prepare for this topic? Because, a movie, you can watch a movie. So I went to her, I said, what's a trope? Do you know what a trope is? She goes, yeah. And she gave me the example of, the bookworm kid who's just, suddenly becomes, a hero, or, so
that's
they
on the
still
list,
exist.
Actually.
Yeah, they still have.
My son gave me a couple as well.
Yeah. They know the term, it still exists. And, I wouldn't think that they would be referencing 70s movies too much, but, but yeah, we grew up in those 70s and 80s movies. So I think we're familiar with those tropes more. I think,
Christy, we recognize it today because there's such a strong surge of nostalgia today, and it's all really condensed. It's not like it used to be, where even back in the day, they were referencing older movies, but that was more of an homage. It was more of like a visual cue or something like that. Here, everything is so concentrated and they're very unapologetic about it. Just, this is what we're doing because this is what we grew up with. So it's easy to kind of just replay that stuff, but do it, I guess, because we live in such a more PC world today that it has to be, we can't do the things that they did back in the day, and especially now that Disney has, control over pretty much everything, the monopoly on all this kind of stuff. But I don't know. I think the whole idea of the losers coming together, and it applies to not just sports films, but also like Stranger Things, and you got Stand By Me, and you got all these other films that are just pretty much the same thing. And it's about them. They're the only people who they can rely on one another. So no matter what they're doing, even in Stand By Me, there's some pretty, the cursing in the film, there's a lot of kind of subversive kind of stuff happening in that film. Even I find that wouldn't really play today as well, I don't think.
It's definitely a different
kind of thing,
Yeah, definitely we're in a different time. But Sean, do you think some of these tropes, like with the kids, with the ragtag, is it just because if something gets popular, let's just replicate it? Right? Is it more of a money grab? It's Bad News Bears was, people liked the scruffy kids, so let's do more of that.
I think it's. I want to echo what Nick said, but I'll phrase it this way. I think tropes can be like comfort food. There's something that, sometimes I want to see the jerk in a film get their comeuppance at the end by the geek. And when I don't get it, sometimes I'm like, I wanted that, I didn't get it. So I feel like sometimes I need the tropes, and I rely, and I maybe because of nostalgia, or maybe because that's just me. I want to see somebody get their due, and I do think if they work, if you think through time, all the stories, they build off others. It's like another version of a story we've already heard before, but it told in a different way. And, sometimes the tropes, they maybe like Christy said, maybe they're a little bit better at hiding them. And
could be.
But I think having them there, I think it works because of nostalgia, and because I think they're comforting, and we want to see it play out in a different way.
So for the geek getting the best of the bully, I think we'd have to go with, no, Biff, you take your damn hands off of her.
Yeah.
Probably the single best punch in cinema history. And probably the most satisfying punch ever. That Crispin Glover sells that nerd guy that summons the inner strength to to get the girl, right? That's the classic one of the bully and the kind of like My Bodyguard from the 80s as well with Matt Dillon and some of those films. And I think Back to the Future probably illustrates that trope the best. But in a way that's, like you said, it's satisfying because it kind of, the payoff is genuine. It just didn't happen all of a sudden. We saw this character kind of be gawky and awkward throughout and slowly kind of understand, things were coming into focus for him.
Yeah. Like the movie Coda, which was beautiful. I loved it.
There was
that girl that was such a bitch to the girl who had deaf parents, but she gets no comeuppance. And I'm like, I wanted it, even though the movie, like it didn't affect how I felt about the movie, but I was waiting for the moment. When's she gonna? Never gets it. I'm like, all right, fine.
It never occurred to me for her to get her comeuppance.
Yeah, she doesn't get anything. Like she doesn't.
But until you said it, it never even occurred to me.
Now it's going to bother you.
Now, speaking of comeuppance,
really
there used to be
there
used to be a code in movie making back in the 30s and 40s that if you made like a gangster film or a bad guy, he had to get his comeuppance. He could not get away with anything. So that's why always with these gangster films, they always had to die. The gangsters, it was always your crime doesn't pay. And that became its own trope by default because the movie code or whatever it was like, no, we're not allowing that. You can't, we won't authorize or distribute a film where the bad guy wins.
Right. And even in the slasher movies, when Kaiser says, but the slasher movies, when like teenagers would be doing drugs or they would be having sex, and then suddenly they're going to get killed, right? It was almost like
it's Friday the 13th.
Not if you're a virgin. Not if you're a virgin, you're okay. But as soon as you start having sex, you're getting a harpoon through the both of you.
And why do you go upstairs when you hear a noise? Who goes upstairs in a dark house when you hear a noise?
Exactly. That was actually one of my son Jake's tropes was the always going up the stairs, the girl with the blonde hair,
or just not getting the hell out of anywhere when something is going on. Don't investigate, leave.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Or the slasher is lying there on the ground and you're having you're like, oh, I can't. I'm like, he's not dead. Get out of there. Right. Stop having a conversation about what
they recover. They help each other up. They're limping away, and then the guy gets up,
pounding on him with a shovel or something. Like, just don't until he's in
sit
pieces.
Down and cry next to the body.
Yeah.
This is amazing because one trope just bleeds into another.
Bleeds into another
conversation because we're talking, we're jumping, not really jumping a gun, but we're covering all kinds of tropes in one topic. So I think that's fantastic.
Stream of consciousness. But to break that up, another one is the if you're an action fan, you see this a lot. The hero is surrounded by like 8 guys. But only one guy at a time approaches to fight.
Oh my God! Yes.
As opposed to 8 guys rushing, one guy will walk up. He'll get then the next guy takes his turn, and then the last guy's like, "Oh, I don't want to fight," because he like real. And then the hero's like, "No, come on," or like, why are we not? Especially if you're henchmen, you work together. You guys play cards together. You sit and drink. Why wouldn't you know? Why would you have a plan of how if you
started that?
Absolutely, Bruce Lee, probably.
I think that
code
it's like one at a time.
It was definitely a code thing.
They fought like gentlemen, only one at a time, please. We're gonna. The other guys will stand around and wait.
It was more about your status, and it was about the code of the one. Yeah, literally one at a time. But let's see what you got, kind of thing. You can't just bum rush everybody because that's not the way they do things. So it's just
Well, then they're destined to fail.
In a movie,
fail is right.
In a movie about karate, they did that in The Karate Kid. They just followed suit. Mm-hmm. They were like, we're going to do what Bruce Lee did in the movie. We're only going to fight one at a time in the bathroom. I think like when they're attacking Daniel in the bathroom, it's like one at a time.
Yeah. Even Mr. Miyagi, they came at him one at a time and he dispatched them pretty easily.
It's out of respect.
In It's funny. I once attended a dress rehearsal taping of Saturday Night Live, and the skit, they give you extra skits, and this one clearly didn't make it because I never saw it after that. But it was the bad guys having a conference before. They're like, okay, when I'm holding the guy from behind, can you not throw a face punch? Because you know he's going to move. He hits me every time. Give him a gut punch. So they were like doing all the strategy of how not to get their asses
That's actually
kicked by
funny.
one guy. I know.
That's breaking it down.
Yeah. And they're having they were strategizing about how not to get their butts kicked by the one guy.
It's brilliant. Yeah.
The life of a henchman is,
yeah.
And then the henchmen that get killed and go flying through the air, like when they get shot, like one blast from a gun, and they're like flying backwards or flying through glass, flying off of towers.
The faceless
firing
few.
Glock 9s in each hand as they fly across without
the John Woo effect.
The
well,
John
so
Woo
does
thing
Matrix
made people think they could aim sideways.
Does Matrix take the trope too far? The Matrix
For which?
At some of the later films, they kind of attack him all at once, but he's usually one at a time, and then with the guns and with just endless ammunition, like he never runs out of ammo or a gun.
I think in the second Matrix they addressed that because I think all the Mr. Smiths like jumped him at once or something, and he was like swirling a
I said
stick around.
In the later films they kind of stopped doing it, but in the first film they definitely.
I mean, Matrix is definitely the savior trope, right? I mean that one guy is supposed to be the savior, right? In that first one, at least.
Oh yeah, and it's like Kill Bill, where it's just an homage to a little bit of everything. You get your martial arts in there, you got your gunplay, you got your. So it's combining all of those things in a.
Yeah, which kind of leads to a
world.
Leads to another trope called Deus Ex Machina, which means the God machine. It's probably one of the most popular ones that people don't realize, but it's when all hope is lost, something happens out of nowhere to kind of save the day. One example is Jurassic Park, right? At the end of Jurassic Park, at the very end when they're in like that. In the museum area, and the velociraptors everybody surrounded and they're huddling together. What happens? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, a T-Rex comes in and just starts like this. We didn't know where this T-Rex was. It was never shown except for in that one scene when they were terrorizing the kids, and then it walks off or whatever. Then all of a sudden, it pops up at the end when he's precisely when he's needed, not a moment
in the building.
Before.
In the building.
Yeah, no one heard him. No one, he was rumbling a glass of water from like 1,000 yards away, but he walks into the visitor center.
Right.
No one realizes that he's able to walk in.
The building is fully intact. He didn't crash to a wall or anything. He's just there in the main lobby.
And probably didn't even pay admission to boot.
Right.
So John Hammond would not be happy about that. So that's what that is. It's kind of that stuff happening from seemingly out of nowhere that and it's usually at the end because it usually helps tie up the film. Like Avengers Endgame is another one. Thanos it says rain fire on everybody and everybody's going to get killed. Out of nowhere, Captain Marvel comes in, who has not been seen throughout any of the things, and just like goes through Thanos' ship, which makes it fall down. Like she was not talked about and even mentioned. You forgot she was even part of the movie until they needed her. They didn't set it up. They didn't set anything up. So that's that trope there.
If you go back to, is the ending of Die Hard that like the guy comes out with the gun who wasn't dead, the guy who wasn't finished off. So there's the trope, right? He was the blonde guy.
Yeah.
And but who pulls out their gun, but Powell, who's never brought his gun out and since he accidentally shot a kid and he kills the bad guy.
Yeah, this guy was literally like, he had a chain around his neck and he was like strangled and he was like hanging up like a piece of meat. And he somehow survived that and he comes back. It's not like Gary Busey in Lethal Weapon where you knew what was coming. Yeah. And he just had that showdown with the same kind of thing with Mel Gibson.
It's funny you mentioned it because one of the biggest also tropes is the buddy cop or the mismatch.
Right.
People that have to work together that don't like each other for what, even if Lethal Weapon kind of is known for it. I mean, before that, you could make a case for 48 Hours, but Lethal Weapon kind of codified like that genre because then everybody started teaming up. Let's get a comedian with a serious guy or an action hero or, Robert De Niro and Eddie Murphy. It's like, who could we mix and match together that's oil and water, that, this would, they would never work together, so let's smash them together.
Yeah, and then of course, like you say, it's like the guy that won't die, right? I mean, that trope too. Like, it's like, but in that case, Gary Busey is the psycho, and that's another trope in itself, is the psychopath too. Like the guy who seems to be above everybody else, who has those like supernatural abilities. Like he can burn a cigarette on his arm and not feel anything. And he seems to have those abilities that exceed your hero, but he comes in and then it's only then that they're perfectly matched.
Yeah. Usually it's the other way around.
Exactly.
Usually the hero,
it's like David and Goliath kind of thing, where it's, but here it's like all of a sudden they're perfectly matched, and it's just this even thing. Like, it's just that happens a lot too, I think.
Yeah. And usually it's the hero that takes an unusual amount of punishment, but like the henchman gets punched once and he's out. But the hero can get stabbed, beaten, rolled over glass,
right?
Thrown through doors, and he's able to pull himself together and have like a big slugfest, a la Indiana Jones, who's our favorite. He gets a pass for every trope, by the way.
Yes,
of course.
Because Indiana Jones
absolutely
is chock full of tropes. The talking villain. The Deus Ex Machina with the Ark actually opening it and the ghosts come out and save the day. But of course the villain that talks but will not kill. He'll kill millions of people, the villain, but he will not kill his nemesis. Can anybody explain that?
He won't do the dirty work. Like he's always got the henchmen to do it for him. Yeah. Yeah,
even if you get the henchman to do it for you, why do you feel the need to walk away and trust that it'll get done? Like they have to leave. They spend 20 minutes telling you why they're going to take over the world, or they're going to create nuclear holocaust.
Right.
And then they say, I need to leave now to execute my plan.
Because they want to be liked. This is our political system. What are you talking
acting
about?
It's all about the acting. They get to do that big monologue, like that. They come in and they say what needs to be said, and then just let somebody else. That's all over Star Wars too. I mean, especially the newer stuff.
Yeah.
You see that happen a lot.
Obviously every movie would be over in 5 minutes if we didn't have that trope.
Yeah.
Right. To go back to what I was saying earlier about, do they do it better now? So if you take World War Z, if you've seen it, when they get to the end and they have the antidote to the virus, it's kind of the same thing, right? Where I think they just cover it up a little bit better, as opposed to a T-Rex walking through and it's like, oh, there it is. I still think they're just
kind of known, so it was like that was the quest was to get there. Somewhat safely,
well,
but
it's
it's
just like the Ark was known. We just didn't know what was going to happen when they opened the Ark. What we expected and what did happen. Who knew closing your eyes tightly would save you?
Would save you.
That's what saved them. That's like that. Like Mayim Bialik totally debunked that whole thing on Big Bang Theory. Like Raiders, like Indiana Jones is not the hero in that story. He just happened to have that little bit of knowledge because he's an Ark. He had that. He remembered. Don't look at the Ark, because the Ark supersedes everything, right? Well, so so there's no real hero in that situation.
That's enough to make you, in my eyes, you're a hero. If I was there, you gave me that information. You're a hero for life.
He picked a real carpenter's cup.
Getting back to the whole getting beat up thing, nobody gets beat up better than Harrison Ford.
Oh yeah,
sorry.
I agree,
man.
And that became a trope within the own films, is that you knew he was going to get decimated each time, but he was going to like dust off his hat and put it back on. So is it okay if it's escapist and does that make it more acceptable? Because we know Indiana Jones is going to get the crap kicked out of him, and we know he's going to come back. He's going to come roaring back. He's going to be delivering punches after getting beat up.
It's such a great. I love Raiders as my favorite of all of them, but that scene in Temple of Doom though, at the very end, where he's on the rope bridge and he's just hanging on for dear life, and then when the hand comes up, that's like my favorite moment, because he got through that. He went through hell and back, and he's
Well, it's why we go to movies, right? It's for suspension of disbelief, like that.
Right.
That is, we go. Top Gun 2 is a perfect example. It was honestly a very enjoyable film. I loved it, but it's ludicrous in parts. But it's okay because it's Top Gun, and I'm going in with that expectation. So tropes and all, I'm suspending my disbelief in a movie like that because I'm going in to be entertained. I'm not going into. It's not like I'm watching Casablanca and I'm going to think a little bit or some 3 billboards in Ebbing, Missouri. Like I'm going into certain films and I'm allowing it. I'm allowing him to be able to hold on with one hand, and I'm like, you can't do that.
Well, yeah, like what about all the Clint Eastwood films? Like, I mean, that's another trope in itself. The hero getting so beat up in the middle, where he's on the verge of death, and then there's that the scenes where he's recovering and he's in bandages, and then but at the end of it, he takes his revenge. He gets the villain at the end. He comes back and he just decimates that. That's like every Dirty Harry movie.
Sounds like The Dark Knight Rises as well.
There you go. Yeah,
right.
But it's that thing where you think the hero's all but dead at that point, and the villain just goes on and whatever, but he comes back and does his thing.
Well, it's the same. It's the same thing, right? The villain kind of doing their thing and then leaving somebody for dead, which I don't understand. Like I said, if you're willing to kill millions of people, what's the guy in front of you like?
Right. You can't just shoot him in the head.
He's the one in front of you. That's the major threat. Like the innocent people that you're going to blow up with a nuclear bomb, they're not going to know it's coming. This guy is in front of you that's going to get in the way of it.
Yeah.
Dean, they're faceless.
And explore to great effect in the Austin Powers movies.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Where Dr. Evil would explain everything in detail. The Death Star. and just explain everything. And he would be befuddled as to why his henchmen can't do things. How come we don't have a shark with lasers on it?
Yeah.
Like, I want the supervillain, like I want the things that a supervillain has, and I can't get them.
Yeah, why aren't your people cooperating? And that's great stuff.
So it is fun when they can laugh at it and kind of make fun of it, because then you understand that they understand that it's a trope, that it's a real thing, that it's
a trope that is ridiculous.
Are aware of it. They're aware of it,
right? And they're just breaking that fourth wall and making everyone aware of it. That this is a thing. This is something to be.
I'm not going to lie. In films, much like Sean likes when people get their due, I do sometimes enjoy when I'm completely shocked and like the person I least expected to get killed gets killed, and they kind of do the opposite of a trope, where it's I never saw that coming. That's enjoyable. And again, it's kind of like going again. It's like we're going to do the anti-trope in this because you all think that the hero is going to win. I kind of like sometimes when it doesn't work out.
So that's when they're winking at Psycho.
That's film noir right there.
Yeah, kind of like Psycho. The main what you think is the main character gets killed pretty much in the beginning. Right. And you're not, they're totally messing with that, where, especially back then, where you had a character and they were the hero or the heroine throughout, no matter what happened to them. In Psycho, Hitchcock just cut that off and said, yeah, we're going to show you this story, but she just happens to be a part of it, but she's not the actual.
That's a good, you're talking a good 45 minutes, I think, of the film. That's like almost towards the middle where she gets, killed. And then it just completely takes.
Yeah, so it's like two movies.
Yeah,
it's like two movies in one, where he's subverting, especially like I said, coming out of the 50s and the 40s, films were kind of made a certain way. There wasn't too much. They were just getting into the experimentation in the late 50s and then the 60s. So taking one of those,
that was red herring days. That wasn't trope days.
Mm-hmm.
But Hitchcock was known for tropes, right? I mean, he had the MacGuffin was like the trope he went to all the time, right? Whereas like it's a shortcut, right? It's something where you don't need to establish something to the audience. It's like, the spy's going after the briefcase, they're going after the microfiche, they're going after this or that. You don't need to explain to the audience; they know. But then the more you use that, eventually the audience is going to become like, okay, I need more. So in Pulp Fiction, they had to open up the briefcase. They didn't show you what was inside it, but it was that extra step. Like, I think if you hadn't opened the briefcase, it would have been a little bit of a disappointment, So yeah, Hitchcock totally played with all those. And, there's visual tropes too. There's music cues, mentioned Psycho, and all the horror movies and Jaws, you hear that music and all right, there's badness around the corner.
The jump scare that doesn't lead to anything.
Scare, right.
Then 2 seconds later, the killer, the cat jumps out, and then a second later, they're like, okay, and then all of a sudden they get their head chopped off. Like they get a moment of relief,
right?
And then the actual murder happens.
It has, in the hands of a good storyteller or filmmaker, it's a shortcut to tell the story and to do it well. And if it's not done well, then it becomes a cliche and it becomes tired and it becomes like, oh, I saw that coming, or that bored,
or just bad filmmaking. If it's
or
not
let me down,
properly.
Right?
Yeah. Right. So what about this one? The nerdy looking best friend suddenly becomes hot after taking off their glasses.
Yeah.
Right. There's the girl that's pining away for the most popular kid in high school, but once she gets done up, he sees her in a totally different light, which is pretty scummy.
For the most part,
we kind of saw that. We saw the first underpinnings of that in Grease.
Yeah,
right, with Sandy, where she was even. I'm sorry, Olivia Newton-John as Sandy Plain was still
very
not
beautiful. Yeah,
yeah. I don't know where they're getting like, oh my god, ooh Sandy, ooh,
right?
She's so plain now.
Yeah, and then Travolta sees like Sandy,
yeah,
But he liked playing Sandy.
The impressions today, Dean.
Tell me about it, stud.
What does that say about John Travolta's character? What does it say about him? It's like he's supposed to be. At that point, he's changing. He's changing who he is.
I think it was
and
more
then all of a sudden she shows up like a whore, and all of a sudden he's back to being, the punk.
I think
this is how I would. I
think he was shocked just seeing how she was dressed. Not he all of a sudden he's wearing the sweater and Danny Zuko turned jock, and then it's like, and then all of a sudden she comes in and the cat calls, the whistling in the back.
And then all of a sudden he's like
he liked her.
He's like
when
the
she
big
was
man
playing.
on campus.
He's the prude.
He did, but
he
what kind of message are you
sending? He was
sending?
into Sandy.
No doubt, but he had to hide that. He had to hide it from everybody else
because
everybody would have,
Yeah. You know how it is, rocking, rolling,
and whatnot.
Yeah. So
what's that?
By the end of it, what kind of message are you really sending here? Like, it's like, okay, it's okay.
Change who you are, and then you'll be.
And you'll get the guy.
Yeah,
I
right.
Guess,
just like that. Just like there was a whole bunch of those in the '90s where it was like the bookwormish girl,
in the 90s,
and the most popular. Was it the one with Freddie Prinze Jr. and
that's the one.
Rachel Lee Cook or whatever. It's like all of a sudden she's like very intelligent. She's like an artist, but that's not good enough. Take the glasses off, put on a skirt, and now we can talk. It's like, what?
There was that one with Jennifer Love Hewitt too, where she was, but she was into the nerdy guy.
Can't Hardly Wait, right?
Yeah, Can't Hardly Wait.
That's
right,
That's the last great high school movie in my
Seth Green with those stovepipe pants. when he gets stuck in the bathroom with what's her name, Lauren Ambrose. I think
then you got the trope of the big party, like the big party, the bash at the high school. The big blowout, someone throws up on somebody's couch, or and that house is going to be trashed, and
and the nerds crash those parties. Right? That's in all of those too, like 16 Candles, like John Cusack and her nerd crew like go to the party, and they end up becoming wild men afterwards. Right? They have their first taste of liquor,
and they become popular because of exactly. Just they make out with the cheerleader, they end up with the cheerleader at the end of the party somehow.
Yeah, just like McLovin in Superbad. Like all of a sudden he became, he went from like the nerd to like the most popular guy. The cops were loving him and driving him around. So there's a lot there. There's a lot of those.
How about 16 Candles, where Jake Ryan, he basically sells his girlfriend
to Anthony Michael Hall.
Like he just
didn't age well.
There you go. No,
there's so much in that film that didn't age well.
Yeah. A lot of those
wonderful. 80s. Some Kind of Wonderful is a good example, because she's into Eric Stoltz.
That's a great example. It's a little different.
Ending. Yeah, it's the thing where he realizes that she dug him all this time, and and they're really good friends, and that's the way it should be. And that, so I think that had a very positive message, at the end. But
what's the opposite of that is actually Pretty in Pink, where you kind of watching, you're like, is she going to wind up with Ducky? But no, it turns out that Andrew McCarthy's character isn't a dick. Just James Spader, as normal in the 80s, was. But she winds up with the cool, popular guy. And Ducky, moves on to one of
Annie Potts.
Is that who it was?
Yeah, but that
no,
was,
he doesn't move on to Annie Potts. He moves on to the other girl, but
he does
the
honorable thing by letting her go, because he knows that she's really into him, and he turns out to be a really good guy, and so we're just friends, But
here's the thing about those two films, though, right? Pretty in Pink came out first.
Mm-hmm.
John Hughes did not like that ending. That's why he made Some Kind of Wonderful. He reversed the roles, and the girl from the other side of the tracks was with the regular guy, as opposed, in Pretty in Pink, he wanted, Molly Ringwald to be with John Cryer, but they rewrote the script or whatever. So he goes, okay, I'm going to rewrite this as Some Kind of Wonderful, where they do, where Eric Stoltz doesn't go off with Leah Thompson, the beautiful, unattainable. He realizes that's not for him, that the girl, his love has always been quote unquote right in front of him.
Those earrings weren't for her.
Another really great example is a movie that it's barely seen. I've seen it back in the day, but I've never seen it since, on streaming or even available for physical media. Was The Last American Virgin.
Oh, wow!
The guy, oh my God, what an ending of that. I mean, because he does all these things for her, the guy gets her, pregnant, and, this whole thing with she gets the abortion, and he's there the whole time helping her. The other guy doesn't want anything to do with it. And then she ends up back with the guy that she, I was like, man, what an effed up ending that was.
He's crying at the end of that, right?
Yeah. He's driving and he's crying. I think it's Peebo Bryson, in the, and the tears. I mean, but man, what an ending. That was a shocker. I was like, wow, you're talking.
That actor, you know where that actor's from? Yonkers, New York.
Ah, see that?
Really?
Hometown hero. And another one of those parallel tropes is the same thing, the career-minded woman or the career-minded guy with the best friend, like My Best Friend's Wedding type stuff, or there was one with Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds where, where they're career-minded and don't see that the person that their best friend is actually in love with them and pining away.
Yeah.
And they're off after the unattainable guy or girl, and they're about to get married, and then the guy or girl finally confesses, "Oh, I've been in love with you."
Come on,
how come you didn't say it earlier? How come you never told me?
Yeah, why didn't you ever say anything? And Kurt Russell.
Yeah, it's like Frasier too, with Daphne and Niles. It took how many years for them to get together? Over 7-8 years or something, and they finally get together. Why didn't you ever say anything? Come on. He's been
those are the slow burn romances.
Slow burns, but he's he's not keeping. He wasn't exactly subtle with his.
She just didn't see.
She's just either ditzy or whatever, or just didn't want to see. But whatever, I don't know. But
there's plenty of those. Again, especially in the '90s and the 2000s of the, there was the one with. Or the one with Jennifer Aniston and Jay Moore, where she kind of paid him to be the boyfriend or whatever, and then he was falling in love, but she was in love with Kevin Bacon, and and he's just and those people are usually jerky.
Kevin Bacon he's good at playing a jerk. He's always he plays a good scumbag once in a while.
Yeah. But Crazy Stupid Love, he was that kind of character too. Is the guy that everyone was in love with, and I forget what his name was. It was some weird name in the movie. Anyway,
that was a great. I love that movie actually.
Yeah. So Nick, you were talking about your daughter, understanding what a trope was, which I kind of found amazing. That I mean, you didn't coach her on that. She just was like, "Yeah, I know what that is."
And then I asked my son Marky, who's 9, and he's like, "I have no idea what you're talking about."
Okay, there it is.
Troop? What's the word? What?
Troop? Stormtrooper?
No, but my 13-year-old daughter, she knew, and she was, she had some examples and everything.
That's interesting how they can be aware of that.
Yeah.
and maybe we see it in parodied also as well. So we've got the films that do it, and some maybe subconsciously, and some do it as we need to end this film, so let's just have something fly in, and take care of it. But then I guess a lot of like the smarter cartoons, I think maybe that's why kids are aware of it, like SpongeBob SquarePants, or going back to like Ren and Stimpy, and some of those other ones that kind of played with some of those. There was that different level of, there was a kid's level to this humor, and then there was an adult level, and I think some of those tropes kind of got visited there, and maybe that's where kids kind of got that from. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, The Incredibles totally plays on the superhero tropes, and you mentioned the cartoons, and they all play on those kind of familiar concepts. And I wonder, are there tropes that kind of have played out after a while? Like I was thinking about Cars, and all the tropes around cars, like you can't start the ignition, when you need to, or you walk into a car and you don't have the keys, but you look in the visor. There's the keys.
Of course, it's always in the visor.
But nowadays,
like,
cars aren't like that anymore, right?
Right.
So,
also the ignition, you turn it, it's a bob. Car blows up.
Or you have to hotwire the car, and yes, only you know how to do that. So
and then once it goes, it blows up.
Or hitting the car and then turning the ignition, then it comes to life. Like after you've tried to turn it, and then you hit, you hit it, and then you turn it on, and it starts again. Kind of like Fonzie hitting the jukebox.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how I used to start my car in college. I used to yeah. Yeah, I remember those days, driving clunkers and hoping for the best.
Actually, Eric helped me with one of those. I had a car that had a manual transmission, and it wouldn't start. And him and this other guy had to push it so I could pop it, just like the mother in Karate Kid. You're like, push the car and pop it into gear. Pop it when I say pop it.
And it just come to life, and you
try to
like,
get
in. And
yeah, we lived that trope was real of pushing the car to get it started and popping it into gear.
Car chases were always
Dean,
a big trope.
Get stuck. Oh, yeah. Dean, you didn't get stuck, and then made Eric come, and you were just going to tell him that you're going to play for the Philadelphia Eagles, and pretend. Does anyone get that reference?
Yes, Invincible.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
That was really obscure.
That was very
That's not that
very
obscure.
So Nick, you were saying about cars?
Yeah, the car chases, like those are tropes too. Like just.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how often do you see a car chase that kind of lasts more than 5 minutes? Unless it's like the California freeway, But like you go through the side streets, and it's like they just manage to go on and on and on, and they hit a bump, and they're like flying through the air and jumping over a river.
Woman walking the baby across the street with a carriage just gets out of the way.
Exactly.
It's come a long way. I mean,
all of a sudden there's all these street vendors that their fruit stands get wrecked because the car just drives through each and every fruit stand that's there, like in like The Rock or whatever. Like when everyone's chasing Sean Connery. I mean, the guy totally wrecks the whole city of Los Angeles or San Francisco. Yeah, with one car chase, driving through. Like I said, like impossible turns. Like,
and he hasn't driven a car in how many years because he was kept in prison. But he all of a sudden
he's able to drive like the newest of the new.
Yeah. Well, that used to be an art form in itself, right? I mean, the perfect car chase. You think of Bullet, you think of the French Connection. You can't match that stuff, man. That is just gold.
Michael Bay made his career on it.
Well, you got Fast and the Furious with cars jumping off roofs and twisting in the air, and like
gone in 60 seconds.
Physically can do this. Like, okay, you could turn a car over in midair and land on another roof. That's how ridiculous it's become.
Yeah. Well, and we kind of talked about that. I forgot what episode or when we were talking about it, Eric, but we talked about, some of these tropes become more spectacular also because movie making changed in the mid 80s. Mm-hmm. It went from like just an action film. I think we talked about it with Beverly Hills Cop, where that was just an action film. Then all of a sudden that same type of cop is now a superhero and is able to to jump a car into a plane, and they take these tropes and they like supercharge them because the audiences want more. So you're kind of getting it. Right. That's why you're getting a T-Rex all of a sudden coming into the visitor center and biting a velociraptor, because it's just like the same things, but the audience's expectations are bigger. So you have to deliver the same thing on a much larger scale.
Because somebody did it after the fact. And, they're not content to have oh man, I wish John McClane could do that. So they, in the last couple of Die Hard movies, he is at that level where it's just absolute absurdity.
Yeah,
where
it's
in the
superhero.
first movie, you could kind of buy it. Okay. He could, somebody maybe could survive that. Okay.
Right.
Like maybe not jumping off the building and all that stuff, but if he's in hiding all that time and this element of surprise aspect and all that, it could work. I mean, there is that level of believability there, but but then he just turned him into this, he's
Like,
he's
what about
the
Mission
Rambo
Impossible?
movies got more ridiculous too. Yeah. Mission Impossible. Yeah. But
it's
And
glorified
Taken. I love Taken, but look at Taken.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not enough just to be a regular person. You need to be a regular person with a special skill set. John Wick.
Speaking of those, like John Wick and Taken, do sequels need tropes? Like, do they have to have the familiars? Otherwise, it's like, well, like suppose you did a sequel that was completely different from the original. Would audiences be disappointed?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think some people would be disappointed and be like, okay, they could have just slapped the name on it, but it's not really a sequel. It doesn't have those familiar elements.
I can't stand carbon copies of the original film. Like, you basically remaking the film, all the same jokes, all the same, but playing it bigger. There are times when, it works, but sometimes, it doesn't hold up.
Right.
Yeah.
What about Die Hard 2?
No.
Same thing. I have to.
So Die Hard 2 gets a pass?
I like the third one much better than Die Hard 2.
Okay, so you don't like Die Hard 2? Okay.
I like that.
It's just so
I think,
ridiculous.
I mean, we'd have to go with the Austin Powers movies to say to address that, because those three films were exactly the same. A lot of the jokes were exactly the same, but they were hysterically funny. Like why is it so funny seeing the same shadow puppet jokes? Like stupid, like him having a baby or him doing whatever, like with the shadows. Like, why is that so funny? And he gets away with it like a year and a half later in another film, and we're laughing at it again. It's like, is it because it's so silly? And
well, Guardians 2 is another great example of that. I mean, all the jokes from the first movie are in that film, but bigger. Mm-hmm. It took like that Yondu with the freaking arrow. Like, it took forever in the second one. I was like, okay, I get it. I get the joke. Move on. That kind of thing. You see it the first time, it's great. But then, after a while, you see it a few times after that, and you're just, okay, you kind of put that to bed.
So that kind of becomes
it doesn't hold up.
With
like
straight
that stuff
comedies, like Dean was saying, like in Austin Powers, I think we're just more forgiving for the repetitive joke, because we're laughing.
Because it's absurd. It's absurd.
If you're laughing, it's forgivable. It's like how many times did you hear the same joke from someone, like the same dumb dad joke, but it's funny, so you laugh every time you hear it. It's
it's like thing. SNL. Like, when there was a character on SNL, you want to see that character, the Jeopardy up. It's the same exact thing every time, but it's like you can't wait to see that again. You know what I mean? So,
Dean, are we going to get a Sean
sometimes
Connery?
It works. But,
Sean, we already talked about The Rock, so it's too late.
He brought up Alex Trebek on SNL.
Trebek.
That's
vis-a-vis Daryl. That's vis-a-vis Daryl Hammond. So I can't do an impression of someone else doing an impression.
Yeah, but he's so good.
Of someone else, right? Because then it's like once removed, it's like making a copy of a VHS. It's going to be like a little less. Yeah. So I don't think I should do Daryl.
I think we need to ring in the impressions. When Dean does an impression, the bell's got to ring.
Yeah, I agree.
I totally agree.
I think that's a new one.
Maybe here's the thing. I need to get the bell.
You need the bell, Eric. Absolutely.
When he does the impression, then I will do it. Maybe an air horn or something.
Or something else. Yes, you need to have some kind of device, right?
Do you have a hook to pull him off his screen?
Yeah, more like a mute button when I start revving up the horrible impressions. I work on them a little at a time. So.
I think horrible impressions are funny impressions.
Yeah. I don't even try anymore.
Sometimes, Sean.
It's in the
sometimes.
Attempt.
That's correct.
I have this isn't a trope, but this is something that really annoys me. And since we have actors in we got 3 actors on this with us. It happens a lot. The first movie I noticed it was Armageddon.
Mm-hmm.
And Liv Tyler kept calling her father by his name over and over. Da 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 da, Harry, da 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 da, Harry. So the line would begin and end with his name. I don't say, Eric, what are you doing? Eric, what do you think about this part of the show, Eric? I don't use people's names over and over in real life, but in films, it seems to be a thing, like where you have to say their name. And
Writers,
I just don't do that.
It's actually funny you mentioned that, because yesterday, 3 Days to Kill was on, so we left it on, and that's with Kevin Costner.
Mm-hmm.
And they have an estranged relationship, and she's like, his name's Ethan, and it was the same exact thing. Ethan, I'm on my way. Ethan, and I agree with you. It's like, who? No one says anyone's name that often.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's bad. That's bad screenwriting.
Right, exactly.
Is it? Or
It
Nick, is there a reason for it, Nick?
You have to do it every so often because you want the audience to know the characters' names.
Right.
But when it becomes unnatural, like Christy was saying, it's just bad writing. Because you have to do it the way people speak, and you have to find different ways, especially when it's an ensemble. I get annoyed sometimes when I'm like, I haven't heard that guy's name, and I love that character. What's the character? There's got to be ways to throw it in. So as a writer, you see the good ones find ways to throw it in once or twice. But when it becomes so unnatural, then it becomes
because that takes me out, because I'm like, I don't say people's names over, even in conversation. Like if I walk in and say, hey, just a greeting and hello, I don't necessarily say their name.
And that's when the trope fails, and that's when it takes you out of the moment, because it's like, it's fine when it's familiar or a shortcut, but when it shows up and suddenly you realize you're watching a movie, or the computer stuff gets to me sometimes when it's like, they just know how to use these computers so fast, or they have a disk, or
I guess the
thumb drive,
password,
and they pop the password, how quickly they can do it, or surveillance.
I suppose you can get away with that today with today's technology, but back in the day when a keyboard could do everything, like it could physically stop something, like you're typing something in, you happen to know all the codes and everything, and that was
the net.
Well, but it's like, oh, we need to stop, close the doors, and it's always a keyboard that's like, it's like, it's not just a simple button that you can push, like you're right, or panel on the wall. It's a keyboard, that does this stuff.
Takes me out of the
hold
moment,
on to your
right?
butts.
I have a bigger pet peeve, which I'm sure some of you will have, is I don't like when they explain what they're doing because they think I'm a moron. When they say, I'm gonna put the USB in and save the file. I see what you're doing. You don't need to tell me what you're doing.
That's exposition.
It's
that's
just,
overuse of that is always
the audience like, and it happens so often. So
that happens a lot in lately. I think in Star Wars and a lot of the newer stuff, they tend to do that. Like, things are explained, and one of the great things about something like that was always the visual aspect. You see the character performing, like Rey in the beginning of Force Awakens, going about her day, and nobody needs to explain what that's about. Like it's just that is telling you a story right there. When somebody comes in and tells you what's going on while you're watching that is just
that's one of the 7 deadly sins of screenwriting is show, don't tell. Right? You should be able to show this stuff without explaining everything,
except the Tenant. And did you ever see Tenant? I needed to see it multiple times.
I've never seen it.
I've heard of a film called The Tenant on YouTube.
Okay, well, there's a couple of them.
Is that what you're talking about?
Tenant.
Nolan, right? Chris Nolan's late.
Tenant.
Yeah.
Tenant. Chris Nolan's film. Yeah.
Always like
talking about that underground classic. Tenant.
The Tenant.
Well, there's Roman Polanski's, and then there's Level 92.
I was going to say that title seems very familiar to me.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It kind of rings some bells.
That film needs you to tell me what's happening. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but
isn't that a good thing though? Isn't that a good thing that you walk out thinking about it and saying, "Well, what the hell did I just see?"
Yeah,
right?
I had to watch it again.
It requires multiple viewings too. That's always a good thing for me. Is sometimes if a film is too perfect and you just love it out the gate, it doesn't tend to hold up. Sometimes sometimes you need to go back and you get something out of it each time you view it. So
I would say in those cases, sometimes when a movie is so confusing and befuddling, maybe it needs a few tropes here and there to
like Mulholland
ease
Drive.
in.
Oh yes, that one I'm still.
Yeah.
Is that Lynch? Who did that?
Yes.
David Lynch. Yeah.
Anything David Lynch does is.
Yeah, he's wacky.
You need like a Cliff Notes for it to read while you're watching it, so you can.
So another pet peeve
I like
of
the tree of
mine.
life.
Yeah, Brad Pitt's
Yeah,
in it.
that's actually. There you go.
That doesn't count.
I actually have the Criterion version of that, which is an extended cut, if you can believe that. So it's even more convoluted and weird. But one of my biggest pet peeves in movies and TV is the 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock driver.
Oh, I love that.
Nobody drives like that. I'm sorry.
But they're the
nobody
safest on the
drives
road.
with one hand. It's like,
I'll take it one step further. I hate when they're driving and they're looking at the passenger for like 5 minutes. Like, you crashed.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
You
and they're turning the
like
wheel.
this.
Right.
There's the obligatory old lady whose head barely goes above the steering wheel, and she's like, someone needs to get somewhere, and she's like driving like 2 miles an hour, and she's not totally unaware that people are honking, and
that's how we keep Where's the Beef alive. That's how we never forget about Where's the Beef.
I was just thinking Where's the Beef. That's so funny.
See?
Clara Peller.
Where's the Beef?
I remember her name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she was a sensation back then.
I don't know if that's a thing in the film industry that they're required to show somebody driving safely. Is that?
Well, that's because they're not driving. They're actually sitting still, and there's green behind them.
Yeah, but nobody drives. I mean, especially an older person. Like, they're not going to follow the rules of the road like they did when they first got their license. You see people driving with one hand or their hands down here. Or their arm is on the rest. That's how
playing with the radio.
Now they might not even be driving if they have a Tesla. You don't even know.
That's true. They just have their hands like whatever.
How about the trope where someone is a pilot, so he can fly any plane, any ship.
Yeah.
I mean, if I get into another car, I'm like, where's this, windshield wiper?
Yeah. Especially, and it's usually
that's right.
Usually they flew.
It's too close to the steering wheel. Anything.
Usually they flew like a small plane too. Usually like they had like a pilot's like a small private plane license. They have to fly a jet.
Yeah. Don't worry, I'm a pilot.
All the gauges and everything.
Nick, cars don't even have the gear shift anymore. It's buttons. Have you driven one of those? I'm like, it took me forever. I'm like, what the hell is this?
How do I turn on the car, let alone drive it?
Sean, do you have a pet peeve or a trope that really burns you?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say they're pet peeves, but the yeehaws every time, like in the action, like, when they like fly away or yeah, like that kind of stuff. And the one that I sometimes enjoy is the 80s clap at the end of the, for like, the when the kid comes,
like Teen Wolf.
Teen Wolf, right? It's like the 80s clap at the end, or they're clapping at the end of the movie, or when something happens, the whole room starts clapping. Like, it's just clapping is a trope. It's just either clapping for the the kid in the movie, the geek who's now done something great, and I don't know. It's I like them sometimes, and sometimes I think that's not real. Nobody would just start clapping.
We didn't bring up Breakfast Club, which has a ton of tropes in it.
Oh yeah.
What tropes are in Breakfast Club?
Well,
besides the stereotyping of each.
The stereotyping of each
clique,
one, and then in the end, them becoming friends, and
best
it's like
friends.
They're never, it's unrealistic that any of these people would ever be friends. But it's and Anthony Michael Hall writing a letter for them. It's just
we don't know that though. I think that the movie kind of leaves you hanging. I think it's like they say it in the film. Like, are we going to be friends come Monday?
Well,
probably
Judd
not.
Nelson and Molly Ringwald are definitely going to have a relationship a little bit.
Yeah.
And Anthony Michael Hall's like, you're so full of yourself, Claire.
Why are you like that?
Why are you like that?
But tell me, you watch that movie and you don't want to eat a Captain Crunch sandwich. Is that what you put in the bread?
Oh my God! Yes.
Bread with butter and Captain Crunch and some of her dandruff.
Emilio Estevez has the typical field day. Like if you went on field day and you went to the deli and you had 8 sandwiches and the soda and the chips,
all in the Ziploc bags.
The first time Dean and I saw that film, which we saw like what? 2-3 times after.
You actually did that film on here, didn't you?
You did a couple of times.
Did the podcast on that too.
Yeah.
I had such a crush on Ali Sheedy because of
that.
Her in
sandwich?
that film, like Molly Ringwald.
The made up Ali Sheedy or the dandruff?
No.
See which one? See the Sandy
He's no Danny.
Absolute misfit. That's the one that I had a crush on because she was just adorable. Like I liked everything she did. Yeah,
same trope. Emilio Estevez didn't really have the time of day for her, but once she pulls her hair back,
right,
all of a sudden she's beautiful, and
that's
she's
right.
This gorgeous.
Which is, today is problematic. They do comment on that, and Ali Shee was like, I hate that.
Right.
And they commented on today when you hear them interviews and stuff, like they say that they don't like that scene, like
right.
Well, they're not going to like a lot of scenes from a lot of these films prior to the 2000s because it's just the way it was. Women were that's how it was viewed.
Yeah, they were more objectified.
It's not right. It's wrong, and we're correcting it now. But it gets into what we were talking about before we started, which is the cancel culture. It's like, do you not watch these movies because of that, or do you accept the time period it was in? So.
Yeah, it's a tough call. You have to be able to put it into some type of perspective.
I like actually looking back to the good films. Okay, if they and if there are things problematic, it's actually a lesson to be learned. It's like how were we thinking back then?
Yeah,
and
no,
so you
absolutely.
watch it for those that entertainment value of how they did things back in the day, and how they thought about things.
Yeah.
Look at
so
Cagney
it's a time
movies.
capsule.
How many times did Cagney put a grapefruit in a woman's face?
Smack them.
Yeah.
Smacking women around.
I have one because I had to. I just watched Highlander over the weekend, and I had to comment on this.
We're not doing that one yet. Why'd you watch it?
No, well, because it was this there. It's on Peacock, and I put it on, and how about the obligatory sex scene where people jump in the sack during extreme circumstances? Like in this case,
there's always time.
They have sex because she finds out that he's immortal.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden she's like turned on by this guy, and like and the next thing they're like in the bed.
The ultimate example is Terminator.
Terminator. I was thinking the same thing.
That's true.
Linda Hamilton's getting chased, and this guy comes from the future, and they've got time to shack up in a hotel room while they're making pipe bombs.
Thinking about sex during these moments?
They're making pipe bombs, then they jump into bed, and then they continue making bombs.
We spoke about this during A Few Good Men, but that's why you have to respect Aaron Sorkin, where the studio wanted Tom Cruise's character and Demi Moore's character to have a sex scene, and he was like, it will ruin the film.
Yeah.
You just can't have them having sex because they're
for no
working
reason.
together.
Yeah, it was more it was more titillating back then. It was just kind of like even we were just talking about Top Gun. That's got the scene in the middle of it too. They're having some conflict, or they finally get together, and it's just kind of that's a trope within itself of having the artfully lit sex scene, a montage of it, and then you cut to the next morning and they're smoking in bed, or one someone's dressed and
depending on the rating, the woman's gonna have the sheet up to her breast, and the guy's gonna be down to his waist.
Of course,
of course.
No, the guys aren't modest, but apparently the women are.
Yeah.
So,
in the case of Highland, I just thought it was hilarious that she stabs him. Like she takes the knife and she stabs him, and he's like, "I'm immortal," and like, oh, so that's reason enough.
It's been building up. Well, it was building up, and
so what you're saying is she's shallow.
I don't know,
or maybe almost murdering someone really turned her on. Perhaps
I guess so.
It could be
a little fetish.
Putting a knife in someone's stomach made her be like, "Wow, okay."
I like feet and stabbing people.
There you go.
Well, she did write a book about swords and stuff, so I guess maybe that is a thing. So who knows?
Cool.
Anyway,
so I think that's going to do it. I think we've covered a lot of the tropes. Is there anything we missed? Last call around the table.
A lot.
Nick? Well, I'm sure we missed a lot, but I think we covered a decent amount as well. Yeah. And let us know. You can let us know at 3324 Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. What tropes did we miss, or what tropes are you don't mind, or which ones are just too much? And are you aware of them? Sometimes you're not aware of them until you start thinking about it. Maybe this episode has helped you think about some of those tropes if you didn't know. Or maybe we just ruined a lot of movies for you. We might have just We might have just turned off a lot of people that be like,
a lot of tropes.
That could be true.
yeah.
Never
A lot of
noticed.
people might have been like, you know what?
Seeing it.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, a lot of people might be like, wow, I really loved Grease, but now it's a shitty film because, now that I can't unsee how John Travolta was
Zuko is
looking
a
at her.
horrible human being.
Yeah. What the hell you think you're doing? That was my Kaneki. That was my Kaneki.
Oh boy,
That
sounded a little like Al Pacino.
Well, wait for the
Al
Heat episode.
Pacino
You're going to
and
get them
Dick
all.
Tracy. It was Al Pacino and Dick Tracy.
You just said goodbye to oxygen, Dick. That was Dick Tracy.
Oh boy,
Big Boy Caprice. That was his. That was.
We got about 10.
I like Dustin Hoffman.
Al Pacino does Dick Tracy and Glengarry Glen Ross in the same year. How much more diverse do you want an actor to be? Who would do that favor for Warren Beatty and be Big Boy Caprice, and then go do Glengarry Glen Ross? That's the range that he has. He could do it all.
Wow, we're going to end on an Al Pacino high.
We're going to end on Dick Tracy as well. We're not Al Pacino. We're ending on Dick. I need people to respect Dick Tracy, the film with the great Dustin Hoffman
Charlie
as
Korsmo,
well.
is that the kid's name? Charlie Korsmo.
Charlie Korsmo was the kid, and he was in. He was in Can't Hardly Wait, I believe. Right?
And wasn't he in What About Bob?
He was the kid in What About Bob, and then he went to Washington and became like a
he's like a professor,
politician or whatever. So yeah, he does something, but
he doesn't act. That's what we know he doesn't do.
Not anymore. If we do an episode about child actors, Charlie Korsmo.
That's a great topic.
Because he was a cute.
It is actually a very good topic.
Yeah.
Child
actors who made it, who died.
Put that on the list.
Child actors who made it and died. Wow.
No, some made it.
Well, some were traumatized.
I got news for you. They're all going to die.
Corey Haim didn't do as well as Jason Bateman. That's all I'm saying.
Wow. Okay.
Or how about the kids like what's the kid from Phantom Menace who
Jake Lloyd?
Jake Lloyd, he became a drug addict.
He had to go into seclusion.
Did he? Oh, really?
He went into seclusion.
Such backlash from people hating
It was a bad movie.
Yeah, but he was a 10-year-old kid playing a 10-year-old kid.
That's his fault. I'm not blaming the kid. I'm just saying it was a bad movie.
Exactly.
Blame the creator, George Lucas. Right? So again, if we've ruined films, we apologize, but don't hold us personally accountable. We're sorry. It's just this is how we look at them. So
it's just a thing.
It's just
If Dean's impersonations offended anyone, we apologize.
If my impersonations offended anybody, please reach out to Eric and let him know.
Yeah, I'll take it. And that's what'll prompt me to get my. I'll buy that air horn and I'll.
And then just so you know the process. Any complaints that come through, Eric receives complaints. He writes them down. He rips them up and throws them in the garbage.
I'll take any kind of feedback.
That's the process for how we deal with complaints.
There you go.
That's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. Thank you to Nick. Thank you to Sean, whose video was frozen through most of the episode, but we were able to hear him.
He's still there, though.
At least I'm got somewhat of a decent expression on my face.
Yeah, you kind of look like you're like, hey. Your expression is kind of like, hey, guys, I just got here. Hey.
Yeah.
Actually, it looks like he's saying, is there any more beer left? That's kind of like the expression on his face. Kind of like, hey, are you drinking that beer? That's what it looks like. So, Sean, thank you very much for joining.
My pleasure.
Christy Cuomo, as always, thank you. And Nick, Nick Leshi, thank you for partnering with your daughter to have her explain tropes to you. So you knew how to prepare for this episode.
I wanted her to guest star with me, but she
could have brought her in.
She refused.
Well, you know what? With this group and the language, I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't be able to shield her from that.
Maybe next time.
But and as always, Eric is here with us each week. So check us out each week. We also do live shows every other week. That's a lot of fun. We do trivia nights, so that's a way to come in and test your mental metal, as it were, as we throw stumper questions your way. But that'll do it. Thanks to all of our guests. For Eric, this has been Dean, and we're asking you to please be kind and rewind.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.